Hello. All right, everybody. Let's get started. Welcome. My name is Rachel. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling in from Providence, Rhode Island. I'm so psyched to be emceeing tonight's event. We've got some truly incredible speakers lined up to talk to us about Renew. First, we'll hear from Reverend Mariama White-Hammond, who's the co-chair of our organization. And then we'll pass it off to Varshini Prakash, the executive director of the Sunrise Movement. And then we'll hear from Representative Khanna, Senator Bernie Sanders, and to close the program, we'll have Representative Ayanna Pressley. After Congressman Pressley's remarks, we'll split up into 6 breakout rooms, one for each state in New England, where you can learn more about local Renew projects and how you can get involved within your own state. Wow, okay, so we have an exciting night, and that's a quick breakdown of what we'll be doing this evening. So now I'd like to pass it over to Reverend Mariama White-Hammond, who's one of the co-chairs of Renew. She's truly an incredible organizer and leader who's done absolutely amazing work to help build this coalition and guide us. This organization really wouldn't be possible without her. So please, Reverend Mariama, take it away.
It's really good to be with everyone this evening as things are starting to cool down in New England. Last week was a scorcher. I think all of us are thankful that summer is here, but also that this week is a little less intense than it was last week. So shout out to everyone who's watching this, particularly folks on Facebook. You know, Facebook has its challenges. We're not here to talk about that tonight, but one of the things that I love that can happen sometimes is it sends you a little reminder of what you've been doing, what you were doing 5 years ago or 10 years ago on the same day. And one of the things that came up for me recently is 10 years ago, around this time, I was just getting back from the US Social Forum. It was June 22nd through 26th in 2010. And I remember at that time, we got together, a whole group of us, to organize 5 buses from Boston to head out to Detroit together to be part of this space, this gathering of people trying to imagine where we needed to go in the world. And the core slogan was, "Another world is possible." I remember that because I was running a youth program in Boston where summer is a more intense time than the school year because suddenly young people were in our office all the time. We were organizing, we were creating art together, and we were doing this with other youth groups from other parts of New England. We created this group called the New England Freedom Riders, and I was able to go back and find our t-shirt that we built from that time. And it's just folks from Massachusetts and Maine and Rhode Island, so we were only halfway there, but we had a vision for getting to this larger place. Folks came together and we were really excited to roll together in buses, yes, all 12 hours of a drive from Boston to Detroit. And just before we got ready to leave, one of the young people that had been helping to organize, his name was Eyeball Brown. Eyeball was a young organizer, really excited, really engaged with a number of youth orgs in Boston. And just about 2 weeks before we were supposed to leave, I think it was, that Eyeball was killed. And it just really was a tough moment for us. Not just because he had such a strong impact on so many people's lives, but because it was one of those moments when you were like, we're doing everything we can and still we're not always able to beat back the forces that make it challenging for our communities to survive and thrive. And so I want to just take a moment to name Eyeball, to recognize him. This is a picture of him. He was an MC, young person, who brought his art to his organizing. But I thought about that. I thought about what we hope for. And I thought about that slogan, "Another world is possible," and the excitement that we felt, particularly because we were not just looking at one issue, but because we were a multi-issue group, everything from housing to education to criminal justice and climate justice. We were really trying to do something intersectional. I think about that because over the last 10 years, my concept, my understanding of what we need in this world has shifted and gone deeper as I recognize how deeply unstable the system that we have is. I think all of us have seen this particularly in these last few months, as we've watched so many lives be taken because of COVID. We in New England have been deeply impacted. In Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island specifically, we have some of the highest per capita effects from COVID of any place in the country, quite frankly. And so here we are as a group of folks from across this region who in our hearts recognize that something new is needed, that a shift is required. And so we've come together. This Renew New England, maybe you're like, what is this? It's a group of 50 racial justice organizations, labor unions, environmental advocates from across the region who believe that another world is not just possible, but absolutely necessary in this moment. And it's not just because of the climate crisis. We are looking at 4 overlapping challenges of mass unemployment, which we had even before COVID, but has been deeply, deeply impacted by the economic shifts brought on by COVID. Racial injustice, which our country is looking at in a way I have never experienced, the depth of conversation that we're having right now about the sins of this country and what we need to do to shift. The coronavirus pandemic and what it's done in terms of ravaging the health and all of our systems that it's impacted, and the climate crisis. There have been times in the past where we've tended to work on each of these things as if they're separate, but this group is coming together saying we recognize these are overlapping crises. They build off of and worsen the impacts of each other. And so we've come together creating and working on and developing a policy built around a jobs guarantee. We believe that we need to put Americans back to work, not just doing any old job, but in really good, strong paying jobs that have benefits that help us to address the crisis that we're facing in our nation. We think now is the time to focus on making sure that every American has access to a job that is well compensated, that is dignified with strong union protections and collective bargaining rights, the kinds of jobs that people can feed their families on. And we believe that those jobs need to come in the areas where our country needs to rebuild. Areas like housing. I don't know how about y'all, but we are feeling the pinch in Boston. So many people are days and weeks away from the possibility of eviction. In healthcare, our systems have been tested more than ever before. And food security. I don't know about you, but I've been paying a lot more attention to this question of where our food comes from and the unequal and dysfunctional system that we call our food system. We need clean air, we need clean water. These are the areas of focus, of energy, of transportation, of all the things we need for our communities to thrive. And so we're coming together across our region, across our 6 states, where we're connected, but we don't always work together, to say it's time to do some old-fashioned, grassroots, neighborhood organizing to get to the point where we can create a system, where we can create a vision of another world being possible right here in New England. So I'm excited today because you're going to have an opportunity to hear from other folks, and we have more than 100 candidates for state and local office across New England who are signing up to be down with this vision. Folks, we are building an army of volunteers, and part of the reason we're here tonight launching is because we hope that you will be part of this group of people believing that something different is possible and that now is the moment to move forward. So we'll talk more about policies and all of the things we're gonna move forward, but I wanna end with a quote from Arundhati Roy that I have reflected on quite a few times over the years. She says, another world is not only possible, she's on the way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. I believe that Renew New England and the work that we're doing is about building that new world in our neighborhoods, and in our state legislatures. We are doing this work, and we are so excited for all of you who've joined us tonight to be part of making the rubber meet the road and building the new world that we all need. Thank you for joining us.
Whoa, thank you so much, everybody. Wherever you are, give her your snaps and your jazz hands as well. That's incredible. I'm thinking about now is the time. I'm thinking about Ival. Thank you so much for sharing his memory. Wow. Well, next up, we're going to hear from Varshini Prakash, who's the executive director of the Sunrise Movement, who's one of our key partners in this organization in New England. Sunrise has really led the way over the past few years in bringing young people into the climate justice movement, just like me. I remember last September, I hadn't done any organizing, but Sunrise not only empowered me to act, but taught me, as well as so many other people, that the fight for a livable climate is deeply connected to the fight of racial and economic justice. That intersectional understanding of the climate crisis is a North Star for our organization. And I'm so excited that Varshini is with us today. So Varshini, please, the floor is yours.
Wow, Rachel, thank you so much for that introduction. Your energy is infectious. I am so glad that you were a part of the movement, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to Reverend Mariama and Matt and all the other folks that have been putting in so much work to take Renew from being just a dream when I talked to folks about it just months ago to reality now. So hi everybody, my name is Varshini. I am one of the co-founders of Sunrise Movement and currently serving as the executive director. And for those of you who don't know, Sunrise is a movement of young people who are sick and tired of waiting around for the change that we so badly need, who have decided to take our future and our present into our own hands and make climate justice through racial and economic equity a priority and a reality in this nation for the first time. So we build people power. We have an active, a vocal, a disruptive base of thousands of young people across the nation. We build political power by electing a new wave, a new generation of politicians to office who are going to fight tooth and nail on this issue. And we are giving young people in this country a voice in our politics. So I'm really proud and humbled to be here because this is what we live for as Sunrise. Today, we are embarking on a collective, coordinated, ambitious program for justice across New England that brings the energy from the grassroots into movements of what I believe will be unimaginable size and power, both in the halls of state houses and city councils and for Sunrise, we also work on Congress too, but also outside of that. And that connection, building both the inside and the outside power together into one big movement, that is what is really, truly exciting to me and is a huge step for movements across the country. So, in the last few weeks, I have seen the power of young people organizing and flexing their muscle in our politics. Over the last few weeks, Sunrise members across the country made 800 calls for newly Congressman-elect Jamal Bowman in the New York 16th district. He was able to run an insurgent campaign, ultimately unseating a 31-year incumbent, and was able to expose him for this failure of leadership. Sunrise Movement volunteers, like a bunch of kids on computers, were able to make 65% of that campaign's phone calls to get out voters, to total strangers, to help them to vote safely and securely in the midst of a pandemic. That is power. In Kentucky, Charles Booker's race, who unfortunately we just heard that he lost it by just a couple thousand votes, ran statewide for Senate in an effort to defeat Mitch McConnell later this November. But Sunrise Movement kids across the country were able to make hundreds of thousands of calls, help elevate a bold, visionary Black candidate to with what would have been to office in one of the most compelling and inspiring races I have ever seen in my life. And we did this all with volunteer power, with ordinary people having conversations day in and day out, And we were able to upend politics as we know it and make things possible we could have never dreamt of before. But you know, Sunrise also had humble beginnings, right? 3 years ago, we didn't exist. Before we sat in at Nancy Pelosi's office with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and helped make the Green New Deal a household name, before we made millions of calls for candidates or waged a campaign to secure a climate debate, we were a ragtag group of kids with a really ambitious vision and a plan to make climate justice matter in our politics. The first year of Sunrise, we ran a 75-person full-time fellowship in the summer of 2018, and Sunrise young people living across the country in a network of movement houses spent their summers and falls knocking doors, texting and calling voters, holding politicians' feet to the fires who were taking money from oil and gas and working to elect climate champions at the federal, state, and local level. And we saw the difference it could make to just have a handful of young people activated and organizing on a campaign. We saw mothers, pipeline fighters, small business owners, and more have a fighting chance, and some even win. So if we could do that in 2018 and then go on in 2020 to get every major presidential candidate on the Democratic side to release ambitious climate plans, get them to swear off oil and gas money, force them to understand and speak to the connections between economic, racial injustice and the climate crisis. Can you imagine what we could do together if we got organized to take over state houses across the country, starting right here at home? So I gotta say, we can never underestimate what organized, ordinary people can do, because the minute we take the risk to try and take that leap of faith, magic happens. The rules of today will not be the rules of tomorrow, and that will be born of our actions. So I'm excited because Renew New England is about making what seems politically impossible into a political inevitability. And thank God, because I am tired of seeing the most progressive states in our country fail to provide adequate health care or be the climate leaders that we need them to be, because our political leadership is so far behind where the people are. I'm tired of seeing gatekeepers hold back transformative change. I am tired of people telling Black and brown communities and poor communities, you have to wait for environmental justice. And I'm tired of seeing our politicians tell young people that a livable future is way too radical. I'm ready for a wave of change that's going to take root in our state houses. I am ready for the people to have power. And this vision that Renew is putting out is getting me excited for the first time that this might all be possible right here at home in Boston, where I live. So if you're ready, if you're feeling hype, like, y'all gotta join and commit today to being a part of that movement, commit to being a part of making history. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be every step of the way with you all. And yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Rachel.
Whoa, so cool. Wow, I am feeling that power. I am feeling that magic. And thank you so, so much for being here and sharing and doing all the work that you do. Wow, okay, so many snaps. All right, well, we're not even close to over, because next up, we've got Representative Khanna. He's an incredible leader in Congress on all the issues that we care about: building a fairer economy, fighting for racial justice, and working for bold climate action that really meets the scale of the crisis. Wow, we're so glad to have him here tonight. So now I'll pass it over to you, Congressman.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm so excited to be here to support Renew New England. Varshini, that was such a moving, inspiring speech, and your leadership with the Sunrise Movement has been extraordinary. I don't have much to add to what the previous speakers have said, and I know you're hearing from some great people like Ayanna, Pressley, and Bernie Sanders, but let me make a few key points. We're in a national crisis, the likes of which we have not seen since the Great Depression. We've got massive unemployment, higher than we've had since the New Deal. We have racial injustices, not just with the lynching of George Floyd, but exposure that in almost every state this is taking place with police violence, and that the issue of equity and justice with Black Lives Matter extends far beyond the criminal justice system. It extends to districts like mine in Silicon Valley, where there is massive underrepresentation of brown and Black people. So we have two huge crises in this country. And the question is going to be, how are we going to respond? Are we going to respond with incrementalism, with building on minor policy adjustments with what has come before? Or are we going to realize that we have some fundamental structural inequalities in this nation? That it is outrageous that people are going without health care at a time where we have a healthcare epidemic. It's outrageous that people are having to worry about how much they're going to pay for Cobra, the thousands of dollars, and can't get the treatment that they need when people need most healthcare in a pandemic. It is outrageous that you have people having to do their homework in parking lots because they don't have access to the digital technology that you and I and people on this call take for granted. It is outrageous that we have essential workers who are getting us our food, who are getting us our basic supplies, our packages, who are keeping the internet open, that they are not being able to be paid what they deserve, that they're not getting PPE, that they're not being protected. The crises, the dual crises of COVID-19 and George Floyd's murder open, I think, our country's eyes to the need for a new progressive era in our nation, to actually completing the work of FDR on the New Deal and of Dr. King in the 60s on civil rights and racial justice. That is our calling as a nation. And I don't believe we can do that without grassroots mobilizing. I don't believe we can do that without grassroots mobilizing, not just at the national level, but at the local level, at the state level. People say, well, we already have organizing efforts. And I said, you can't have too many organizing efforts. Organizing is what makes the difference. Lacey Clay and I at the Peace Act, which would have changed the standard of force in this country to be consistent with international human rights law. Right now we have the William Rehnquist standard. It means officers can shoot you if they think you've acted unreasonably. So if they tell you to do something you don't, under American law, under William Rehnquist standard, officers can shoot you. We said, no, it should be consistent with every other democracy, Western democracy. Force can only be used as a last resort. We only had 22 co-sponsors last year when we introduced it on the 5-year anniversary of Ferguson. Today, the House passed it with 231 co-sponsors. What happened? It's not that suddenly Congress had to change. It's that people were out in the streets. They were organizing. They were mobilizing. The more people organize, the more they mobilize, the better the chances that we get a Green New Deal, Medicare for all, free public college, an end to bloated military budgets, racial justice and policing. If we care about these policies, we have to organize, and we have to organize at every level of government. So I just want to take this time to salute you, to thank you, to applaud you for what you're doing to build a progressive future. And as some of you know, I was a co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign, and I say this, Bernie Sanders didn't lose, Bernie Sanders won. He won the future of this party. We are going to have a new progressive era in this nation. That is a matter of time, and it's going to come sooner than people realize. We are going to build a multiracial, multicultural coalition to have a new era of economic justice and racial justice. The work you're doing is going to help us get there far sooner than people anticipate, and these crises demand those progressive solutions. So thank you for your passion. Thank you for organizing. I'm a big believer in Renew New England, and I look forward to seeing what you do to support these progressive policies.
Wow, okay, so many snaps, so many snaps. Wow, I feel that organizing power deep in my gut right now, and I hope everybody at home, almost 700 of us, can feel that power as well. Thank you so much, Representative. Wow, okay, now my friends, we are going to hear from Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont, who recorded his remarks for us in advance. I'm so excited to hear from Bernie. He's been leading the way on so many important issues throughout his entire career. His vision of progress is so closely aligned with our own. And as Bernie points out, real change always emerges from the grassroots, not from the top down. And that's exactly how we're going to transform New England, through community-led grassroots organizing. We are so excited to be working alongside him in this fight.
As I think all of us know, New England has historically been a leader in the fight for progressive change from the first days of our country. And I'm so glad to see organizations in all New England states coming together in the fight for justice, in the fight for environmental justice, in combating climate change, in the fight for racial justice, in the fight for social justice, in the fight for economic justice. As I've said a million times, real change never takes place from the top on down. It only takes place when people come together and are prepared to stand up and fight. And right now, all of you know, we are living in an unprecedented moment in American history. It truly is. What we are seeing is that hundreds of thousands of people all across this country, in New England, in big cities and small towns, people are going out on the streets to fight against systemic racism, to fight against police brutality, to fight against police officers murdering African Americans. And that's a struggle that we must continue. It's a struggle that says we need real criminal justice reform, that we're going to end the absurdity of having more people in jail disproportionately, African American, Latino, and Native American, than any other country on earth. That we're going to invest in our young people, we're going to invest in jobs, we're going to invest in education, not more jails, not larger police departments. But in the midst of all of the activity around police department reform and criminal justice reform and fighting racism, we cannot forget, not for 1 minute, that this country and this world face an existential threat in terms of climate change. Planet is warming, and what the scientists tell us is that we have a handful of years, 6, 7, 8 years, in order to significantly cut carbon emissions to save the planet and to leave this planet healthy and habitable for our kids and grandchildren. We don't have a choice. This is what we have got to do. So I'm glad to see organizations throughout New England, in fact, throughout the country, coming together to say that we need to implement the concepts of the Green New Deal. And bottom line, what that means is we can create millions and millions of good-paying union jobs by taking on the fossil fuel industry and by transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And we're talking about good jobs all across the spectrum, from people weatherizing homes to people building new solar panels and wind turbines to transforming agriculture. We're talking about millions of good-paying jobs as we substantially cut carbon emissions and help protect this planet from the ravages of climate change. So I want to congratulate our Rights and Democracy and all the other organizations who are coming together to build a strong grassroots movement to say that we have got to save the planet, we've got to move forward with the Green New Deal, and that when we do that, if we do it smartly, we create a whole lot of good-paying jobs, which in these very difficult economic times will be a great help to working families throughout this country. So once again, congratulations to Rights and Democracy, to all of the organizations that are coming together. Let's go forward together. Let's transform our country in every sense of the word. And last, but certainly not least in that effort, we've got to save the planet and move forward with the Green New Deal. Thank you very much.
Whoa, that was so cool. Thank you. Thank you, Bernie. Wherever you are, I'm sending you so much love. I'm thinking about being confronted with the battle of racial justice, all while the climate crisis is just kind of looming over us. But with Renew projects and what we're starting tonight, we'll be able to tackle both. Okay, whoa. All right, now we're gonna hear from our final speaker, Representative Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts. She was the first woman of color to be elected to Congress from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and is truly an inspiration to me. Wow. Representative Pressley has been an amazing leader in Congress in the fight for universal health care, racial justice, and serious, ambitious climate action. It is truly an honor to have her here with us tonight. So Representative Pressley, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me just say, Renew New England, this has felt already like a revival, like a rally, like a reckoning, which is exactly the moment that we find ourselves in right now. And it is so fortifying for my spirit to be in virtual community with my activist family, with all of you today. This youth-led, youth-centered movement, you are exactly why I introduced a federal amendment to lower the voting age in federal elections to 16, because young people like you have been historically and continue to this day to be at the fore of every transformative social movement in our country. Your acumen for legislation, your sweat equity that you extend, laboring to actualize social, economic, racial, climate, housing justice, justice in all things. Dr. Cornell West reminds us that justice is what love looks like in public. So just thank you all. And I want to say a special thank you to Mari, to Reverend Mari. She was, just keeping it, fully transparent, one of the first Black people to ever center in community racial justice and climate justice. And she centers young people in every action that she takes. And I also want to wish her a belated happy birthday. So again, but thank you, Renew New England, for inviting me to participate tonight. It is clear now more than ever before when folks talk about they can't wait until COVID is behind us to return to normal. We reject that status quo normal. It was insufficient, unjust, and inadequate to begin with. Half measures and incremental change will not deliver justice. What we need are bold, progressive solutions, and that's exactly why Renew New England has been created. And let's be clear, progress isn't achieved by policymakers. It is not about, and not to give short shrift to what we do here, which I'll be leaving in a couple of minutes to go vote and to represent the Massachusetts 7th proudly on the House floor. But it is not for the conviction of lawmakers. It is for the courage and the commitment of everyday people. My mother was a tenants' rights organizer, a community activist. And there are many reasons growing up in the residual aftermath of racist, draconian, discriminatory policies like the war on drugs and mass incarceration and redlining and Jim Crow, and I could go on and on. The attacks have been precise on Black Americans for a long time. Many reasons why we could have felt small in voices, but my mother made sure I knew that as a people and as a community that we were powerful. And I believed her then, and I still do. And one of the reasons why I ran for Congress, actually while I was in that process of deliberating, I attended a progressive event. And one of my colleagues at the time on the Boston City Council said, progressives do bold things. And then another sister colleague of mine on the Chelsea City Council at that same event said, nothing changes if nothing changes. Those words were really an important part of my decision to run for Congress, to represent the Massachusetts 7th, because too many folks in our communities have been left out, ignored, and left behind. And I do not subscribe to the notion that anyone is voiceless, but too many people are unheard. And it is my job, partnering alongside all of you, to not just occupy space, but to create space for all of your voices to be heard. And so that's why organizations like Renew New England are so important. You are pushing the boundaries. You are helping us build toward not just a dream, but what is possible with strength, with the strength of a movement, with the strength of conviction. Every transformative change that has occurred in this country has been the beneficiary of movements like the one that you are building right now. As we are living in the midst of 3 pandemics, the public health crisis that is the coronavirus, the public health crisis that is racism, the only thing that COVID-19 could not kill was racism. Police brutality a scourge born out of the original sin of slavery, and the exacerbated financial hardship, housing insecurity, food insecurity that families are facing in this moment. You know, even in the midst of all of that, people ask me, given this fire hose of insult and assault, these pandemics within a pandemic, the crisis within a crisis, are you growing cynical or apathetic? And my answer is the same every time. I don't have the luxury. We don't have the luxury. Think about how we would have better weathered the storm that we're in right now if we already had Medicare for all, paid family leave, paid sick leave, people were working at a living wage, a truly just criminal legal system, a student loan system that isn't punitive, and a more equitable economy. This is the reckoning. We are at a tipping point, and there's a paradigm shift occurring that you, as the architects and foot soldiers of this movement, are ushering in. You know that this work doesn't happen alone. It's only possible through coalition and through movement building. Ro, Bernie, I need your help. As activists, advocates, community builders, candidates, and office holders at every level, we have to continue to demand and to assert change, to organize, to advocate, and to legislate for it. And so I thank you. I thank you, movement builders. I thank you, disruptors. I thank you, table shakers. I thank you, community and coalition builders. I thank you for demanding change, for demanding more, and for working for it. Thank you. Thank you so much for the honor of participating in your launch event, doing this vitally important work. And I can't wait to be with all of you in community soon.
Whoa, please everyone, where you're at, give your snaps to her. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Wow, I'm thinking about that quote you said, nothing changes if nothing changes, but we are here to make a change. As everybody said, our participants know that we are the change. Thank you so much for everybody who spoke here. Wow.